have this, oh, sorry, should I, oh, first and then, okay. And I was very lucky to have Artur around, and I was always impressed because Artur, in every session, Artur would bring a new project or a new idea and the different elements to combine also art and research. And that was really impressive for me. And also Artur was very important to create some initiatives inside the Institute, like for example, the Brazil in Focus that today works more or less like an incubator that many researchers bring their knowledge on environment in Brazil, but also connected with different countries and not just Latin America, but Europe as well. And I think the kickoff was really Artur trying to bring new ideas and always make this effort to make people encounter, talk, and exchange. So I think today this session is a bit like a ritual that he's finalizing his fellowship at the Institute and starting a new cycle. So thank you so much, Artur, for all this time that we spent together, but also for these possibilities also of exchanging and having the opportunity to create the new. So I will share with you a little bit of the bio of Artur. So after 1.5 years as Humboldt Climate Fellow, now Artur is Art Fellow at the Givertor Stiftung in Basel, Switzerland. And his work has been focused in urban and regional land planning and the conservation policies in the Brazilian Amazon. Artur also has 2 illustrated books published on different environmental issues in Brazil and works now with affective communication. He believes that art and its practice and appliance is a fundamental means of strengthening human relations. By the touch of traces and colors, he portrays history, the land, and its people. His purpose is to make the context that we live easier to feel and understand, especially for those who are distant. So Artur, the floor is yours. You have more or less like 30 minutes for your presentation. And afterwards, we will be happy to have a conversation with you about your work and new projects that are coming up.
Okay. Cecilia, thank you very much for the short introduction. And I need to say that it's an honor to have all of you here because, okay, although I'm living here for almost 2 years, most of it was really impacted by the pandemics, and most of us, we didn't meet in person. And I think that's an honor to be able to talk about the thoughts that I've been having these times and also some of the results and some changes that I decided to track, yes. And I also am quite glad to have the opportunity to have been here in the Institute during this time because of not to have this open floor for me to have new ideas, new discussions, and all of the support that I had from Cecilia and also from the Fellows Unit in the most diverse ways. So I'm quite glad to be able to explore some new ideas and come to this. And sometimes I think that I was in doubt of trying to get into that. I think that is a bit, is a path that sometimes is not seen as easy. So for me to decide in going through art and to share this with you is a really honor. And okay, let's go for it. So the name of it is Artistic Transition and a Scientific Knowledge, perhaps to a more subjective communication. One thing that I think that's important about that is actually because I'm going to talk a bit of myself and some of ideas that I've been having to subsidize the idea of communication and using art to it. So I would like not to apologize, but to say that I'm going to talk a bit of my work and my productions, not only to subsidize it, because I see that the practice is also part of a methodology that we should use. This is even a discussion that we were having, Cecilia and I, lately, about art as a methodology for we to solve and to feel and to do different paths, but also because as my fellowship ended already 3 weeks ago, I understand this also as opportunity to show some of the products that I produced during this time. And as Cecilia said, I'm quite glad because in the very same day that my fellowship ended, 31st of August, in the very same day, I was granted the fellowship in this Gewerble Stiftung in Basel, where I'm going to produce art materials to communicate environmental and issue problems for 1 year. So I'm quite glad to have this opportunity. And I see this, I understand this as another offer to go further with these experimentations. Yes, so just a little about me, because I think that's important to show a bit of this transformation. I worked for 4 years in Manaus. Manaus is the biggest city in the Amazon region with 2.5 million inhabitants. I worked in this foundation, FVA, Fundação Vitória Amazônica. And which is actually the oldest NGO working in the Brazilian Amazon with more than with 32 years old, yeah. And I was the manager of the Observatório da Região Metropolitana de Manaus, what would be the Manaus Metropolitan Area Observatory, where I conducted with some other researchers and also the support from universities from the city and also state and federal level, land planning policies and also studies, and we were able to travel in different cities and also produce different materials. And it was super interesting actually to see the power, for me personally talking, not the power, but the strength and the importance that NGOs have to foster civil rights, yeah, human rights discussions, and also to foster and to push the government for it to do their job, yeah. So it was quite, how can I say that? It really gave me new perspectives on how to work on field. And by working there, I got impacted by the power of NGOs, by the importance that they have in the civil society, but also as we were facing the change of government to Bolsonaro, I saw how it would be, how all of my work and the works of the ones that I liked, that I loved also, was going to be impacted by his administration. So I decided to apply for this Alexander von Humboldt Foundation Fellowship on Climate Change and having the opportunity to work here. And most of my job was focused actually in understanding a cooperation tool, finance cooperation tool between Germany and Brazil, actually between Norway, Germany, and Brazil in the other side. That's the Amazon Fund that nowadays is completely frozen. But it was actually, and it still is, although it's frozen, the biggest fund to work towards rainforest conservation in the world. I had a problem actually working with this project because most of the NGOs that I was going to interview, they closed their works and the projects that they had within the fund because of the pandemics. So it was a kind of stressful. They only resumed their works in the last 4 months of my fellowship. So I decided to change a bit of my approach also. And I'm quite glad actually, because I was able to, among some other publications, to publish some chapter of books, one together with the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, here the Hoffnung für Brasiliens Regenwald. Actually, that was a joint publication between IASS and the BPB, the Bundeszentrale. I published also 2 articles in Cobra, the Brasilicum, about the Amazon Conservancy and the role of civil society nowadays and how we should discuss better this Green New Deal, also in a Brazilian level. I really am glad to have been able to discuss that with some other fellows of my fellowship and to publish with the support from the Institute, the second here in the middle, in the bottom actually. And we were even able to do an event about that, about the Global South relationship towards the North and the other way around also, especially considering the post-pandemic scenario in our countries. And actually, this was the first one when I saw and when I realized that I was not going to be able to decide and to discuss and to conduct my studies. I did a study here also as a discussion paper with the Institute about the increasing fragility of the Brazilian Amazon, where I discussed the layers, where there's many layers that we have of fragility there in Brazil, but especially in the Amazon rainforest. And at some point, I decided to go actually to rescue and to revive a talent that I have, that's drawing, that I've been working with that for some years before going to the Amazon actually. And I understood that during the pandemics, this would be of great importance, actually. Not only, I think that it happens with almost everyone, to see some frustrations occurring because of the pandemics, because of the lack of opportunities to go in social and to begin working in different ways that we've been planning. So it was important. And by that, actually, although I did submit and published various articles and discussion papers and blog posts, I began thinking about the role of them and how I could better communicate them and also to touch them, because I realized that my own job was going to be, depending on its communication and its impact, another piece of information in a world that we have already tons of news, even fake news, and that's kind of hard for me to touch people and also to discern between what's real or not. So I begin feeling that, and I begin feeling the need to go towards art by a personal way of understanding what I was feeling and also in need of communicating, and how I could work joining both ideas. Yeah, also not only the results of my studies, but also my drawings. And that's why I share this idea of drawings not only as products, as final products, but also as methodology for we to do both, for we to understand them, for we to understand the practice and also to feel it. And by doing that, preparing better materials that are more transparent, more sincere, that could be easier understanding the other side, yeah, by the ones that we want to communicate. And these are some drawings actually that I'm doing. These are drawings from the last month actually that I am practicing and exercising people. Also some scenes of Berlin, yes, the Berliner Dom, here Alexanderplatz, the Überbaumbrücke. I think that most of you know these buildings here. Here was actually in Spain, where I could have the chance to visit my family. And okay, by having this back, actually, I decided also, I'm quite glad, I also talked about that, about the Gewertle Stiftung. But when I decided to go back to that, I had the support from the fellows unit, what was super enriching and also good, because I had some projects that were stopped that I decided to come back with. Here I just have two pictures, and I have also a support with them together with the Institute to share and to publish a book about the Amazon rainforest, not only the Amazon rainforest actually, but about the metropolitan region of Manaus. I am discussing, and I was hired by the University of Amazonas in Brazil to build up a material that's about to be published. Actually, I just received the cover of it, so I think that's going to be finished in some weeks, and I'm going to share with you. And it was quite nice because there also they decided not to go to another report. Yeah, they had some money from the Ministry of Education there in Brazil, of Science and Education, to do these studies about, it was an atlas about the metropolitan region. And they decided not only to publish the atlas, but also to do a child illustrated book to discuss it further and to have better communication with the schools, because they decided they were also realizing that we are not being able to reach our audience. And I'm quite glad, actually, I can't share the book itself because it's not finalized yet. So this is the one that it's ongoing. This is a book that I have already, and I'm quite glad that I already translated it to English, and it's under a proofreading process in the Institute. I have this book here, actually. I have some copies here, and I am planning to launch it in a second Portuguese edition, and the first English edition here in Berlin, depends on how things evolve in November. But this is a book that I really appreciate, and it was nice to recover actually and to rescue the process of doing its English edition, because it is about the biggest environmental disaster that Brazil faced. Actually, it was 2015, 5 of November. One of the biggest tiling dams of iron mines exploded. It basically exploded and destroyed the life of one entire river with more than 900 kilometers and impacted the life of more than 4 million people. And I went there to do a research. Actually, I worked with a university in Brazil, and I did a social environmental assessment actually of the impacts. And we basically visited this year. On the right, you can see me doing an interview with the population there. And we did this interview with 40 communities, and at the end, this friend of mine and I, we decided to publish a book of drawings actually, because we both actually withdrew, and we were able to do illustrations. So the book is basically a diary and of my trip and our trip actually, that I show kind of, where we were and the discussions of the people there and our feelings. And I think that's quite important because here, considering the amount of information that we have, considering that at some point, I feel that, and some of my colleagues also feel that back in Brazil, that we are reaching a roof where we can bear more bad information. I think that going for a more effective and sensitive way of communicating is important, because we can also, the reader can better understand the other reality. And also by working as a diary, as a journaling process, we can also, the reader can also understand the point of view of the writer. So I think that's important to be under this process. And as I said before, I understand this journaling and the drawing as both a process and a final product. And I'm quite glad, because when I have this in English, I will very much share it with you. And I would like to see your opinions and what you think about that. And this book was released in 2017, actually, the first edition. Nowadays, I'm working together also here together with some colleagues. This is another book that I had, that I did actually. I read, finalized the text and the drawings. Is about a trip I made in 2015, talking about colonialism process that Brazil suffered, and also about art and my experiences traveling there. And I'm quite glad that this book is going to be released also, I think, the first semester of next year. So these are some products that I've been working with. Still have. And okay, these are some ideas and some projects that I did that I'm super glad that I resumed them, and I'm thinking about new ones actually to understand how I could better communicate key issues in my perspective. And here I touched 3 different ones. I understand that this is quite interesting to talk about the Amazon and to talk about that with children. Here is a more dense process talking about one of the worst environmental disasters that we had in Brazil. And this one is way more authorial about my perspectives on the countryside of Brazil and their history. So I think that this 3 works in different ways, but also touching the reader. And this is important because, and a really big influence that I have for my work actually is these explorers that were traveling in the world, Africa, and basically, and a lot in Brazil actually. I came to information, I don't know if this is right, but somewhere I read that Brazil was one of the most depicted countries, actually, because the Portuguese were quite closed, and many information didn't arrive in Europe. So it was focused of a lot of different expeditions by expeditionaries and drawers, illustrators during the 16 and 1800s, and actually afterwards also. And we have different expeditions that went there. This one from Spix, von Martius, Humboldt, Langsdorff, from Russia, Debré, from France, Rugendas also. And they have a lot of information. And one thing that I think that's interesting about, because basically one of the points that I was talking is as art, as both as a product and also a process, not only to be understood as a process, but also a personal process that we pass through, but also as a subjective matter of touching and also to discuss different issues that we have. And this is important when we talk about science. And I think that these expeditions are a key issue when we discuss that, considering especially that in the past, for example, they were contracted to travel for years. Actually, here I depicted von Martius and Spix expedition. And you can see that they traveled pretty much almost all of Brazil. I would say, I don't have the numbers, but I would say some thousands kilometers. And it is interesting because these expeditions, they were the most objective as possible. And they also worked as a tool of mapping, naming, and understanding the territory. And by doing that, by also dominating it. Yeah, so it was a powerful instrument, a powerful tool of domination based on art, based on objective ways of transmitting it. And I understand it, evolution of this objectiveness, actually, of this domination, of this idea of understanding everything and being able to translate everything. I think that when you go further in this association, we could begin talking about, for example, I just put here this image of a satellite, for us to think about this idea of nowadays we inhabit a world of deep objectiveness with few space to subjectiveness for we to discuss, to understand the world in a subjective way. And we try by doing that in Google Maps, for example, to make everything visible. So now I can go to the Gobi Desert in China and see if there's a road there or not, if they are growing some crops or not. But I don't understand what's really going on there. I don't. The more, in my opinion, the more we advance it in these objective forms of understanding, and by saying that of dominating, I think that we miss an important gap. That's the human part of it. Yeah, the more subjective part of it. And I think that putting both art and science together, I understand that is not opposite. They are rather complementary, actually. And and yeah, I do understand that art is a key aspect in different, is a key feature in different aspects of life, actually. I'm really reaching the end of my, not the end, I have some few slides more. And I would like to give an example. Actually, I would like to talk about some other examples, but I think that this is quite a quite good example of how art and science and cartographies can work together towards social transformation. This is a project that has been conducted in Brazil, actually in the Amazon region, for more than 15 years. It's called the New Social Cartography, a Nova Cartografia Social. And it's conducted by the professor Carlos Wagner. There I can share the link. Here, actually, I share the link of this study, this proper study. They have more than hundreds of studies already published. But the idea that I liked about this project is that actually, because they're in the Amazon region, you have thousands of different communities living in different conditions and also different levels of contact with the Western, so to say, society there. So in some reserves, for example, in some national parks, there are people there that don't have really access to different policies and programs by the government. And what they do actually is going for different communities and they layer up different maps. Okay, they have the real map, how can I say that the proper map by Google Maps, kind of that they use different ways to produce them. And they discuss with populations, with the traditional communities, their usage of the land. So here in the bigger picture, you can see people presenting their maps of how can I say that, the research usage maps, where they collect different resources, where they fish more. So by doing that, they are able to better understand their reality there, and also to work together in a way to build up information by themselves. And this is important, as I said, as a result, to have the map, and also a map that works as an objective tool for them to better plan the results and their usage of resources, but also objective map that they can see them, an objective tool that they can see them depicted there in the maps that they produced for their own use. And I think that's quite powerful for we to understand different, not only usage of art, but also the power that it has to gather, to put people together to work towards their own process in the land, but also for we as scientists to work together with people that are in different dynamics. So this is a nice example that I wanted to share with you. And in the site you can see different studies. And recently they begin actually in the accident that I said before, in the river, Rio Doce, the Doce River disaster, they have been hired actually to work with the communities there to produce different maps for them to better understand how to respond to the impacts that happen actually. And here are some of the products. This is one of the products actually. And this is nice actually, because this project, as you can see here, I don't know if you see the mouse here, it was also funded by the Amazon Fund. And it's important to see how it was an important tool also to produce and to foster new and cutting edge technology, so to say, of impacting and researching on field. Yeah, and here you can see, for example, here, they even use the draws that they did. For example, here, Babassu Wise, I don't know if you can see this, but this trees, there's a bunch of trees here that are here actually, yeah, where they produce Babassu, which is an important tree where they have an oil from it, and also área indígena, indigenous land. So it's possible to see how they understand the land in a more precise way. Yes, and okay, I put here my slide. I would like to show a movie, and it's a 5 minutes long movie as a closure for this discussion. I don't know if I already showed this movie. I think it's quite important also to have this opportunity to show it here in the Tuesday talks, because I showed it already in the fellows meetings that we have. But this is a movie that I produced together with some other colleagues in Brazil about this accident that I was talking about, the accident of Rio Doce, the Doce River mining disaster, that we and some other colleagues, we begin understanding the power of these communications and this kind of communication in a more effective way. And I can also share the link of it if you want to see it later, but I would like to produce it here. And I don't know how I do that. Actually, I'm just going to put it here and you'll see if you can hear it from there. Is it okay? No?
Artur, we are going to have like 30 minutes for discussion. So it's like 2:30 now. So you decide
it's
if
okay,
you'd like to share the link or if you like to show the movie.
I think it's nice also to show the movie for we to discuss, because it's only 4 minutes, 5 minutes. But I'm also thinking if I can share and if I can just reproduce it here in my end. Do you think this is okay? No?
Okay, go on. Okay, go on. So.
Okay, go on. Okay, so I'm gonna just put the play here.
Eu mesmo, quando criança, nós buscava água no rio numa carrocinha com bode. Nós tínhamos um bode, uma carrocinha. Buscava lá 50 litros d'água para beber em casa, botar na... Não era no filtro, não, era na talha.
Artur, I think it's not showing.
Pote assim de barco, você deposita.
It's not showing.
We only see the one screen here. Muito obrigado.
Yes.
Okay. I
you
need to
choose the other file, I think, to reproduce the movie.
I think I need to stop my sharing.
Exactly.
And then begin a new one, yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm doing that. Stop my sharing, okay. And then I'm back here with you.
A manchete é alunos do interior do Brasil.
What is this? It get out of, sorry. Okay. Now I have my YouTube, no?
Yes, now works.
Sorry, do you have my YouTube?
Yes. Now.
Hello?
Yes, we can see, but we can't hear at the moment.
Okay, no, but you are in YouTube, yeah?
Yeah, everything is fine.
Nós buscava água no rio numa carrocinha com bode. Nós tínhamos um bode, uma carrocinha. Buscava lá 50 litros d'água para beber em casa, botar na... Não era no filtro, não, era na talha. Talha é um pote grande assim de barco, você deposita a água, ela senta, tem uma torneira assim, uns 15 centímetros para cima do fundo para decantar a água, você pegava ela suja lá, colocava lá, deixava de um dia para o outro, a água, o barro assenta e você bebe a água limpa e friinha. Era assim que a gente... Era assim. No passado era assim. Hoje é assim, do jeito que você está vendo aí. O rio morto, do jeito que você está vendo aí.
Mas chegou meia-noite, chegou ali no porto, ali meia-noite a lama. Nós tava até ali, tinha até uma festa aqui na praia, não lembro. Nós chegamos ali no porto, tava amarelão, aí acho que foi no domingo que chegou na praia aqui. Aí você olhava a praia, dava até vontade de chorar. Era uma, sei lá, parece uma lama feia, marrom, amarela.
O rio era tudo para nós, era sagrado, todinho para nós. Agora nós não podemos lavar nem meus pés. Nós vimos o rio tudo afetado, o rio morto, o que nós podíamos fazer?
O peixe estava rodando, o peixe morrendo.
A senhora vai morrer também de tristeza. Eles não pagam a morte do rio. Eles não têm dinheiro que paga. Deus faz as coisas, o ser humano vai destruir tudo.
Tem mais de 600 quilômetros de rio. Tem mais de 600 histórias dessas. Mais de 1 milhão de histórias igual a minha que está acontecendo aqui.
A gente tinha toda a liberdade desse rio aí. Chegar ali, pular de ponte, matar à vontade, entendeu? Tá um calorão lá, vamos pro rio tomar banho? Vamos bater bola aqui, ó. Era legal. Agora não tem jeito. Acabou.
Então, aquele momento ali foi o momento em que eu parei e fiz uma breve revisão em quem eu era, sabe? E a expectativa que eu tinha, né, para o futuro. E naquele momento ali eu sabia que, em função da importância que aquela onda tinha para mim, a gente ia ter aí, sabe, 10, 20, 30 anos de luta, né?
Okay, so yeah, this is the movie that we did about this project. Actually, we did it to begin looking for investments to see if we could do a proper movie of it. Yeah, at the end we didn't. We couldn't find, but I think that's an important piece of art actually to discuss and to further share our thoughts and our impressions about the accident actually. And apart from showing and sharing some of my thoughts and procedures and things that I've been thinking and working in the last months also, I would very much like to know what you think about these processes, about the power of subjective and objective on art, and also in science, and also to thank you very much by listening to my presentation and to give me your time also to discuss that with you. So thank you very much. Yes. And please, if you have any questions, yeah.
Thank you so much, Artur. Really good that you showed the movie. And it has a lot to do also with the movie tomorrow and very beautiful the way you mix up the images and your drawings, but you can talk more about that. So let's open the floor for the questions. I think Mark raised his hand, so Mark, it's with you.
Yes, thanks, Artur, for that very interesting insight into your project. I think it's great that you could manage to progress so well despite the pandemic challenges that you faced. I have two questions, one a little bit broader and one a bit more specific. The specific one was, I'm just curious what kind of governmental help there was with the cleanup and with the adjustments, with damage payments to families that live there, if at all, how much they involved the company that was responsible for that in the cleanup efforts and so on, just a little bit of the background around that. And then the other question is, I'm curious what the residents, the participants in the film thought of the film. I assume you've showed it to them, and to what extent did they participate besides the interviews in designing and in commenting and developing the film, or at the end, did you just show it to them, and what were their thoughts on it?
Okay, nice, Mark. I think about the question. So first, in the more specific one about the government help, as I said, this was the biggest disaster ever in Brazil. Actually, less than 1 year after, we had Brumadinho, who was almost as big as it, but it killed way more people. We had 300 people that died instantaneously in the second accident that happened in another. It was pretty similar. It was also an iron mine that had its tiling dam exploding, and it was some months after. So the discussions about the first accident begin a bit to get smaller, because it was actually, the number of deaths was way lower. We had in this accident 19 people dying, and it was pretty much covered by the news, but at some point it began going a bit low. I don't know, discussions went a bit low. And nowadays, actually, the company that was behind it, Samarco, is a joint venture between an Australian company and a Brazilian company, Vale. And Vale is one of the biggest mining companies in the world. And actually, they are responsible for most of the revenues of the municipalities also in the river, and especially closing to the accident. So it was quite hard actually to have some response from it. Actually, they are supporting, they built up an organization called Renova to help the communities there. I know that actually 3 cities were completely devastated in this process, villages. Yeah, it was not city, it was in a smaller scale. But till nowadays, these people are still living with social rents provided by the government. They still don't have houses, and proper houses, actually. I think that they can decide if they actually, I don't know the specifics of it, but I do know that they are still there. They don't have any support. They were fishing and they have their crops, but now they just receive, most of them just receive some support from the government. And apart from that, and I know that these 3 cities, actually, it's been discussed to leave them as open museums for the future, like for people to remember about the accidents, and they are thinking about, they already have the lands to build up new cities, new villages for them to go there. And I know that these discussions are quite hard also to have the company, the government, and the populations, actually the impacted ones, discussing about that. But I know that the things are getting super slow. And it is expected that the river gets cleaned, I don't know, scientists say up in something like 80 years for it to be clean again, for we don't have any trace of heavy metals anymore. So it's kind of hard situation. And about the film itself, it was interesting because I went there the first time 2 weeks after the accident occurred, and it was quite fresh. And I went there to do this research. I finalized the assessment actually in the first month, I think that February, I don't remember, February 2016. And the university went back actually to most of the communities, giving it back. And in this meanwhile, I finished the book, and the idea was to come back, that the idea of realizing the movie was to come back there and to give back the drawings and the book, actually. And we have made some pictures with the people that are in the book. So have the opportunity to discuss with them again, give the book back and the drawings, actually. I have still contact with some of them. There's an indigenous woman that appeared, she's neighbor from a really important Brazilian indigenous activist, Ailton Krenak. She's also a Krenak. But actually, I didn't show the movie to them because I showed the links. I showed this link. I never went back there to show the movie itself because we are still thinking about how to do a proper movie. This was for a bid. We did this movie, a short movie just for the bid. And yeah, this movie was about showing this material were collected to show the idea of getting the book back and the drawings, but we never agreed. Actually, nowadays, we are applying for another stipendium to see if we can go for its final edition or not. That's it. I hope I answered
you. So I have one question, Artur. Now that you have your work focused on the drawing, do you plan also to find other environmental issues to combine as like inspiration to your work, or do you want to explore any other arena that you can research also about transformation and other social issues? And maybe we should collect another question. I see Manuel, so maybe you could.
Thanks, Cecilia. Hi, Artur. I actually got two very different questions that came to my mind, but as your presentation was also a bit like all over the place there, my thoughts went wild as well. So the first question is again on the mining accident and the dam that broke. I mean, I confused it a bit with the second one you mentioned, the big one, which today began the trial against TÜV Süd in Munich, I think, where they hold them responsible for this. And responsibility is maybe the key word to my question, because of course, this lamenting and scandalizing local damage is a well-known strategy in environmental communication, be it artistic or not. On the other hand, representing the benefit, those who benefit from these kind of negligence and from this kind of production, actually. I mean, it's extractivism, right? It's of course, yeah, they pressed it a bit too much. They wanted to make too much profit, so they neglected the safety standards. But on the other hand, this is a bit, of course, you could, how do you think about juxtaposing these other dimensions of the problem beyond the local and beyond the local victims in these kind of artistic representations? That would be my first question. And the other one is this different, that's on, you said that art for you in these processes of investigation was a methodology. You actually used that word. What do you use it for? I mean, is it something, what do you discover along the way when using art, which you would not discover when not using art? This has not become so clear to me. Maybe we can say to this, is this, what do you discover when using these methods? One thing I wanted to remark though, is that I would personally, but not only personally, no, actually, conceptually, I would refrain from using the word art in every instance where an artistic craft is applied. I mean, you would then need to call literature everything that is written down. Or so I found that a bit puzzling about, especially about these things you mentioned about the those who traveled in the 19th century and documented this cartography thing. Yeah, you can of course call this art, but where is the subjectivity in this? It was just, today they would take photographs, and it was a very stylish, very socially imprinted way of communicating certain information. Whereas art, I would say, would need, and you were actually putting that in your title, this component of articulating a very subjective individual difference in perceiving something to the overall societal way of perceiving things. that's at least my modernist way of thinking about art. So this was a bit a remark I wanted to make, but the two questions on how to portray responsible and and mediated responsibility among these local issues, environmental issues. That would be the first question, and the second part on what do you discover when using artistic methods?
Okay, I'm trying to understand how I could put the questions together to answer. So I'll begin trying to answer the idea of this methodology, because I think it has to do with some other projects in the future that I want to conduct. Actually, I do think that the methodology I want to say actually is also to not only to understand the drawings as a final product and also to understand how I can communicate towards them, but I do think that the fact that I am there, for example, there in this accident by the mining, being there is important to see how I can translate and transmit what I'm feeling there. Yeah, and I do think that being there can be understood in a more anthropological way as a methodology, so to say, not only the practice on field, trying to understand and to interview people, and also drawing them, can be understood as a methodology for the way I want to communicate by the text and also by the drawing itself, but is also the practice of it and the study of it is an important methodology for it, like the practice, yeah, and the improvement of the quality of the material and the improvement of the quality of the feelings also that are involved from my end. Actually, I do understand they as methodology, and I do agree with you that I need to go back for more bibliography and references and to go further studying this, but I do feel and understand that the practice of it is a key issue, and it's important, because otherwise I go back for what you said, actually just referring to other researchers and travelers and expeditionaries from the past, because it is, I agree with you, I compared as a satellite because I think that it was the most advanced technology that you have to depict different realities, this drawing from Debré, Rougin, or the others that I mentioned. So I think that we need to understand and to practice in a more effective way for it to be more understandable also and to be more useful, because otherwise it's going to be just as a picture. And I do think, and I understand your question, and I share not fears, but this feeling that things need to be done in a more subjective way, and not trying also to be to only have pictures from the reality. So I think that working this through text and different drawings is important and of key importance, actually. And it does have to do with what Cecilia asked me about future projects, because nowadays I am working on building up my own business and my own project on working on environmental issues. And I do understand that, as I said various times actually in my presentation, about the process and the product. Yeah. So I do think that is important. I consider these books and these ideas of journaling also as diaries, an important process to be covered. So in my Gewettele Stiftung stipendium, in the fellowship I have now, one of the projects is to go back to Amazonas, to the Amazon, and do another diary about people living there. So interviewing NGO directors or indigenous populations leaders, and also to talk about my experience there, and also trying to understand and to make them more visible for a broader audience. So, and then it's what I said there in the presentation about trying to make the visible invisible, because by the modern technology, we try to make everything the same, and we lose a lot of details about the human feature on it. And also I want to keep working on different projects, and I say, and when I say that, I want to say that I want to work in specific projects to sell drawings itself as products, because it's also important to support myself. So I do want to work in both ends, actually, to have this process and the diaries, and also to work towards with other projects and research groups also to help them communicate better. And one thing, and then coming back to what Emmanuel asked first about the portraits of this just epoxy, I don't know if I got the answer correctly, because I got lost also in the information that I was trying to get to grasp. But the idea in my end was, in this book, actually, it talked pretty much about the other end, the end of the people there, because I think that most of the times they're not depicted, or they are depicted in a very negative way. So they put some, I don't know, a family that lost their families, and okay, talking about, it's quite hard, it's super heavy, but I do understand that it's important to have a bit of hope in the discussions that we have towards that, because nowadays, especially in Brazil, and I think that all over the world, we are being quite sad to face all of the problems that we are having, and I do understand that being positive on it is important. But you really made me think about that, about how, for example, to go beyond that and also trying to depict the upper layers of the ones involved. I mean, the ones in the, I don't know, the government or also the company, and to see how it's possible to do it in a different way. I don't know how to do that, but I think that's an interesting point to go for more, how can I say that, dog watching, I would say, arts, or like arts that are more incisive in answer that. But I don't know, because I am on the other end right now, working in trying to give hope and to have hope also.
I think you call it watchdog arts instead of dog watching.
Yeah, yeah.
Although the dog watching sounds very good also, but I think you're talking more about watchdog arts that that keep an eye out for the safety of people.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Diana?
Yeah, thanks. Hey, yeah, thanks again for the presentation. I have a question maybe going in the direction, it might be like repetitive even to what Manuel just asked, but I was also a bit wondering more about the interaction between art and research. Like first I thought you would be rather, you know, the medium to kind of communicate and translate the research into art. But now I understood also a little bit that you're to some extent also a bit the researcher, really talking to the people. I'm not sure if there is a research interest really to get something out of the interviews, or rather like, you know, transmitting the feelings and the ideas. But still for me, like, yeah, it's a bit the question, like always, what role do you take? And like, you know, how you really take other research by people, how you could maybe work even more closely with also even social scientists, right? Doing the interviews, trying to grasp on the ground, what are the challenges for the future, how people can really move forward also from the situation where they are within. And like, yeah, how art can then also help maybe again, yeah, to communicate also the research findings, for example, like to the people, so that it's like, you know, a both-sided process to some extent. But I was a bit confused also about your role within, and yeah, how this might look like also in the future. I'm not sure if it's confusing, but maybe you understand what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Artur, just let's collect maybe another question from Kari, and then we have maybe the cycle of the questions.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's a bit like similar to the other question. I was wondering if you would also consider like studying the production of scientific knowledge, like for instance, using the drawings just to study the IASS, or kind of use those drawings to study like the models. And I'm saying that because I've been studying the IPCC and following them for like using ethnographic studies of the IPCC for 3 years. And I really liked what you were saying about like showing the kind of more human side of, in my case, like scientific knowledge, those big institutions, because we are only presented like the facts and what is being, but not the whole kind of social and very human process, being having 300 scientists working together for like 3 years, which is really intense. So, but I really like kind of that kind of approaches. Thank you for your talk.
Can I say it? Yeah. Okay, Kari, Diana, thank you very much by the questions and also by the opinion. So first going to Diana, if I got the question right, actually, to see it, to better understand how we can use art and what I propose with that, I decided actually to do my presentation quite broad and open for me to discuss and also have some gaps. I was thinking about presenting some tools that can be used in different ways, but then I decided not to go for that. I decided just to, because as my fellowship ended, I decided also to present some of my work and to have a more open chat towards that. But I do think that art can also be used in different levels, as you said, for example, as dynamics, for example, yeah, for we to decide. Actually, I do use art every time I write a new project. I do some big huge, colorful mind maps to better understand that, because I know that I cannot organize myself if I don't do that. I try to write sometimes, and I know that a lot of people in the Institute use it also to organize it. I do think that this is a way, as I showed that there also with people working on field together with the populations in the Amazon. This is a quite super powerful way for people to work. And also this is a methodology. This is a methodology in a proper way of it, how to collect data on field. And I think that unfoldings of these ways of approach are quite interesting also. And for example, in my end, I am quite more interested in doing the drawings, and also by doing that also work and help in different processes. And I don't know how I can do that. I'm trying to work towards that with some other researchers and institutes also. And I'm quite open to work with you if you want, and to discuss and to come up with ideas and to discuss to see where and why and how we could evolve and not evolve, try to find different ways of working. But yeah, my ideas are mainly focused on the idea of translating projects. And as Cecilia asked before, I have one project now that's about going to the Amazon next year to have a new understanding of trying to visualize, to make invisible processes there more visible, specifically talking about people working there in different areas. And going for, I hope I have answered you also, and going for what Kari asked, I like the idea of trying to make this process less, for the broader picture, for the broader audience actually, so to say, less boring. You know, because at some point nobody goes for IPCC reports, or at some point IPCC reports and Friday for Future strikes can be a bit too much. I don't know, thinking about the audience that don't discuss sustainability weekly or daily. I do feel that's important, and you got me the idea that could be interesting going to the IPCC, for example, not the IPCC but for the COPs, and drawing there and trying to understand people's stories there and people that come from different countries. And I think that's a quite interesting way to touch and to have a more capillary distribution of it. So I think that's quite interesting. I think that I don't know if I got what you asked correctly, but I think that it could be quite interesting to have different approach of it and trying to make it more human also. More human, I mean more, even comics I like, you know, people like comics that comes in newspapers, you know, kind of, I think that these ways are more interesting to go to a broader perspective, yes. I hope I have answered also, Penny, and thank you by the comment.
Well, our session is almost in the end, so I don't see I don't see hands. Haste. Yes, we see one here. So Shrey.
Thank you, Artur, very impressive. Your presentation. Actually, I'm not expert of the art, but I somehow get lots of messages from that presentation, especially that clip and facial expression of the people regarding their suffering, right? And you have presented here, this problem very well, very, impressively, very innovatively. So can you use the art for, coming out with some sort of solution? You have represented a problem in the form of art. So can we use art to, propose some solution to solve that problem? And maybe, in my opinion, if you can compare this art for two different places where there's a problem and where there's not a problem. If you can compare the people expression in those two communities, maybe we can get some message regarding that, right? So you have, represented the people's expression in those places where there's a problem because of that the pollution in the river. Maybe you can, use this information to other places where there isn't pollution yet, but there is a possibility of having those kind of problem in the future. So if you can disseminate this information, it will be a great achievement for the whole community over there, in my opinion, right? So my suggestion is, if you can represent their art for, getting some solution, it will be quite effective, in my opinion. What do you think?
Shrey, I really appreciate your question, actually, because it comes to a lot of things that it puts together a lot of thoughts that I've been having, that I still have, because I think that at some point I came here to have to this fellowship and to work in the Institute because I was suffering personally in the Amazon, seeing some communities and some people that I like suffering because of different, I don't know, because of the reality that was there. And I came here because I had this feeling somewhere inside me of trying to save the world, you know, and trying to make something better, and trying to you know, being quite transparent and here. And I do think that, and I was get a bit pressurized. I think that I felt that more or less with some more clarity during the pandemic, and then I begin thinking and that drawing would be a nice way for me to get out of it, and to get out of this feeling that of the pressure of trying to save the world. I'm being quite dramatic here, but I think that it depicts an idea of how important this is, because I think that the solution itself is not to discuss the end of the mining companies in Brazil, is not to do that. I think that, for example, in my perspective, drawing is also a solution for me, trying to understand and to show it in a different way, to have different ways for we to see that, instead of just kind of the normal mainstream news going on. I think that for me to do that in a more sincere, transparent, and creative way is also giving the society some more truth. And I think that by doing that, we are having a solution. I think that this is a solution also, because going for the mainstream ways, we are not going to have any kind of different solution. This is my perspective. You know, I think that I cannot play this role, because I think that I am more transparent in other roles. And I do think that this practice is also part of the solution from my end, not only by doing that, but also showing the results of it. And I do think that it comes to the second question that you did. I think that comes together with the idea of sharing information, but also not only, as I said, sometimes the presentation, not only as a result, but also as a process. I think that these two truths are part of this answer and part of this solution for me, in my perspective. Yeah. But thank you for the question, because you gave me this insight, actually, because I think that, yeah, these things comes together as a practice, not an end goal that is there somewhere, you know, and it's right now, and it's this practice, in my perspective. Thank you, Shre.
Well, so if you don't have more questions, I would then finalize here the session, say, Artur, thank you so much. Thank you so much also for the partnership through this 1.5 years. It was really a pleasure working with you. I'm here with my really like a cheering for your new projects, but I also hope that we can keep in touch, because as you see, many of us are interested also to explore these new boundaries and different ways of exploring science and art and subjectivities. So yeah, I think we have a very good audience here to bring and also to work together. Thank you so much. And thank you for the fellow team, because I see very much how you support all the fellows, and they sometimes crazy ideas and do not judge, but put more fuel to the projects happen. So thank you so much, Oris.
Cool. I would like to thank you all also, not only Cecilia, but also the others, because it was, I understand this also as a farewell speech here in the Institute. So I would really like to say thank you for everyone, especially the fellow units in the person of Achim here, Judith, and Anita, and Angela also, that have been working with me and supporting me all this time. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that we're going to see each other again. I have some still ongoing projects with the Institute, what makes me really glad. And yeah, that's it, actually. Thank you very much for everything and for these years, and to work together with the other Brazilians has been a super great time, actually. And let's see what happens in the future, yeah? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All the best to you, Artur. See you soon.
Bye-bye. Good luck.
Good luck.
Bye, Artur.